Here we are with our third respondent in the digital democracy submission to the New South Wales proposed legislation, new legislation to do with Crown lands. And I have another respondent in the room. If you could say your name and your interest in this regard.
Yes, my name is Vicki Scott, and I'm a former councillor of Gosford City Council, and now a resident who's interested in what happens with the lands that are in the hands of the public.
Vicki, I know that this that it seems to have caught many people by surprise, this particular legislation that's now in the upper house. What do you know about the proposed legislation or the process involved?
I have to say I know very little. I don't recall anything being said particularly in at council prior to May. However, I haven't seen very much about it at all as a resident. So the only things I've seen are what I see on posts on social media, etc., from people who have interest in that.
Yes, I was aware. Were you aware there was an upper house inquiry after an Auditor General's report early this year about Crown lands? I understand that committee came through Gosford at any stage. Were you aware of what that
I don't
process?
recall it.
So to ask a general question about the ownership and administration of public land, how do you see that as an issue, a broader issue, as an ex-councillor for residents of Gosford, now the Central Coast?
Well, I'm very concerned that governments take consultation with the public very lightly and seem to try and do it as briefly and as and they do it inadequately too. They don't take the public along with them. In this case, I believe we had 6 consultations or 6 workshops throughout the state, but I think that was aimed for council staff and councillors. I think they only saw about 180, so that's not a lot of numbers. And so 180 people, to my knowledge, around the state were workshopped on this issue. It's an issue that should have been workshopped by public forums in this area. We didn't have one of those 6 workshops. They were outside this region. So it seems to me that we should have had a series of workshops in the area.
And what are the particular issues in the Gosford now Central Coast area that you're aware of to do with existing Crown or public lands in your past life as a councillor?
Issues as in?
Well, I'm interested to see investigate any misunderstandings or how the public perceived the ownership and management of public lands more generally.
Well, I think the public generally doesn't know what is public land and how it should be administered. They don't know that a lot of our areas are Crown land and therefore belong to the state. That Crown land is managed by a council on behalf of the state. It's not owned by council, and council can't make long-term decisions about it. However, the public doesn't know that. So we have areas like the Gosford Golf Club and a couple of tennis courts, those issues, a lot of our waterfront, all of that is Crown land, and the public would not know that, would not understand that they think it belongs to local government.
So there certainly appears to be a communication issue as far as, I suppose, a demarcation of what is public land and what is not public land. So there's clearly some work that had to have been done in the administration of Crown lands. Are you aware of any of the issues that the proposed legislation brings up at all? Have you had the opportunity to sink yourself into that?
No.
Well, I asked the question because it would seem that almost everyone I ask about it knows very little about the legislation, which on the surface of it can affect a very large part of New South Wales. But there's to my knowledge, there's only been one article in the Sydney Morning Herald about it in the last week. But outside that, there doesn't seem to be any public information. I'm just trying to see if there has been any other communication.
And I only learnt today by getting on the internet that Crown land started off as being Aboriginal land originally, and I never knew that. And as I understand it, the Aboriginal land councils, when they're applying for land, have to go to Crown land.
Yes.
So one of the issues is if this Crown land is handed over to local governments, that will then the land councils won't have that ability to.
That seems to be a very important point, a nationally important point, if indeed that legislation pushes the application rights of Indigenous landowners. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. We weren't entirely aware of that. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the legislators, presumably watching or hopefully watching these presentations?
Well, there are a number of trusts that were formed around Crown land, and I'm not hearing anything about the trusts in this issue. It seems to me the trusts are just being bypassed, and there was an integrity to the process when it began around these trusts. They weren't formed just for the heck of it. They were formed because they had a job to do. But that seems to have just died away, and the state government has taken full responsibility in that it wants to hand it over to someone else, i.e. the local governments to have that responsibility and completely bypass the trusts. And I think the public need to question that highly, because that was a process that gave the public, through those trusts, some control or some say in what happened to Crown lands.
Yes. Well, that certainly seems to be a theme that's popping up in that regard. The trusts seem to have been ignored in the process. Well, thank you for making your submission, and we'll do our best to get it to the legislators before the deadline, and hopefully they'll garner some good information from it.